Cheers from Fox 31 Denver. On this festive holiday weekend, fireworks aren't the only things booming. So is an exploding Colorado industry, now gaining worldwide attention.
We're as far away as Russia, we're in Italy, Portugal, Spain.
A business here born from beer.
It is basically beer with an added step.
Spirits, bottled in the true spirit of our state.
There's truly nothing more satisfying from a business professional standpoint than walking to a liquor store or a restaurant or a bar and seeing your product on the shelf.
Putting us on the map for liquor lovers all over.
Kind of embodies the West, embodies really the hardiness of the Rocky Mountains.
So on this 4th of July weekend, sit back, grab a cocktail, and join us for Colorado Drinks, the new craft distillery revolution. Here's Fox 31 Denver anchor Jeremy Hubbard.
Good evening and happy 4th of July to you. This is a holiday when we celebrate independence. And independence is exactly what one Colorado industry has officially declared. Craft distilleries. Now, you already know a lot about Colorado craft beer, a billion-dollar behemoth, but did you know they spawned an entirely new business, booze? Colorado craft distilleries now contribute $30 million to the state economy, and they're becoming internationally known in the process. Tonight, we're going behind the scenes with the people who make the spirits of Colorado, and we start with a look at the hard road traveled to make the hard stuff here. There's just something about the Wild West and whiskey that go hand in hand.
John Wayne never walked into a bar and say, "Hey, Pard, how about a mango-infused vodka and make it a double?"
And from Colorado's very earliest days, whiskey was the drink of choice.
Well, when you come off the dusty trail, the first thing you wanted was a whiskey. Basically, your butt hurt and you wanted something to numb it. Back then, the whiskey wasn't all that good.
Okay, so maybe those early liquor makers weren't exactly outstanding in their field, but there was plenty of it, and in Denver's early times, it served as a great icebreaker.
Pretty reliable legend has it that when Denver was no more than a collection of shacks along Cherry Creek, Uncle Dick Wooten, a trader, rolled into town with a wagon load full of Taos Lightning and set up 2 barrels and a plank and started serving drinks free across the bar as a goodwill gesture to his new hometown.
His new hometown quickly developed a thirst for the hard stuff, fueled in part by Colorado's silver boom of the late 19th century.
The mining towns served whiskey to the miners.
Whiskey is a great commodity because you can transport it relatively easily. A barrel of whiskey equals a whole lot of drinks. You can make a tidy profit by hauling a barrel of whiskey across the plains.
But someone figured out Colorado was ripe with all the ingredients needed to make alcohol right here at home. Fertile fields of barley, giving birth to Denver's first brewery back in 1859, where the Auraria campus sits today.
The people who drank that first beer recalled it later on as being highly drinkable but innocent of hops. And that was because it was hard to get hops.
Of course, before too long, a young German immigrant named Adolf Coors came along with his Miner's Banquet beer, and Coloradans were drinking their fill until it all dried up. Prohibition hit our state 4 years earlier than the rest of the country, and for 17 years, from 1916 to 1933, the only way to get alcohol was to get a druggist license, or if your church used it for religious purposes.
There was a congregation here in Denver that went through something like 400 gallons of wine, sacramental wine, in a month until the authorities decided to look in on what kind of services they were having, and it turns out not all of that wine was being used for communion.
Even Coors had to change their business.
What they do primarily is they retool their on-site malt house and the malting equipment to make malted milk, and they become one of the largest suppliers of malted milk in the country.
But milk didn't quench the thirst of the thousands hoping Prohibition would be overturned. They finally got their wish on September 26, 1933, a day Coors had been planning for.
They were ready to roll with trucks at midnight the day that repeal went into effect.
Fast forward a few decades and craft beer became king here. There are now nearly 300 breweries statewide. Last year alone, craft beer pumped $1.1 billion into our state. But for hard liquor lovers, there have been some boring decades of the same old national brands, or moonshine.
Really, spirits in Colorado were fairly backroom, secretive stuff until 2005.
That's when this place came along.
I'm Jess Graber. I am the founder of Stranahan's Colorado Whiskey, and we're here at the distillery at 200 South Calumet, Alameda and I-25 in Denver, Colorado.
For 30 years, Jess Graber had been experimenting with booze.
And I was making the corn liquor and spiking it with a little sugar, and I had a construction company back then, so we were giving it out as presents to architects and engineers and trying to bribe people for jobs. It was better than giving them a plate of cookies at Christmas.
After a while, people started asking for his homemade moonshine, and he thought maybe there's money to be made. He was right.
I absolutely love this room. I call this my second office. I like coming in here for phone calls and that sort of thing.
In a dark room kept at 72 degrees and 45% humidity, a precious commodity is now stored in these charred American white oak barrels. Stranahan's Whiskey, made in Colorado's first modern-day distillery. From the day it first came out more than a decade ago, it was a hit.
I went down to the barrel release party, and as soon as I tasted the whiskey, I bought a bottle, came right over to the restaurant here, and put it on the back bar. It was just a pleasant tasting a whiskey.
Something about the Colorado grains, the Rocky Mountain water, gained it instant attention. By the end of 2004, they had so many orders for it from all over the country, they began to triple production. Fact is, it was too popular.
We ran out of whiskey, which never in my wildest imagination that I ever thought that that would be possible.
Stranahan's actually had to stop selling nationwide and focus on Colorado just to keep up with demand.
So we had a lot of people in the rest of the United States who were upset because they couldn't find it.
When popularity grows, so does interest from the big players. And in 2010, Stranahan's was purchased by Proximo Spirits, the owners of Jose Cuervo and other big national brands. But founder Jess Graber says nothing has really changed.
I think it's successful because people care about what it is.
It was impossible to keep bottled the momentum started by this distillery. Soon, Colorado-made spirits were popping up all over the state, intoxicated by the success of Stranahan's.
They kind of led the charge and parted the waters, and as more and more people kind of follow behind, the barriers to entry have gotten knocked down, and there's more knowledge. It's just easier to do now because you don't have to go out and start from scratch and figure out how to do it.
Now there are more than 80 distilleries in Colorado. Only Washington State has more. And our local artisans are making just about everything you can imagine in what they consider the perfect setting.
Colorado's an amazing place. People come here because they like the pioneering spirit. And I think Colorado's always had that spirit.
The boom is here. You know, I think it's going to continue. You see distilleries cropping up all the time.
From its earliest days, Colorado has always loved the hard stuff. Difference is nowadays there is so much more to choose from, and competition has made it so much better than what Coloradans served up 150 years ago.
These guys are making great juice. You got to make great juice, you know, and it really steps up everybody's game. And, you know, at the end of the day, we're just making booze, so we have something we can sit down around and enjoy.
A brand new take on an old Colorado tradition, liquor. In fact, where we are right now, the Buckhorn Exchange in Denver has a special place in Colorado booze history. They have the very first liquor license issued in the state of Colorado right after Prohibition. Still ahead tonight, a brewing boo-boo, how a beer-making mistake led to the creation of one of Colorado's most successful new distilleries. But first, did you know a fire is what led to the creation of Stranahan's Whiskey? Back in 1998, old Jess Graber was a volunteer firefighter near Aspen, and he helped put out a fire at the barn of George Stranahan, who owned a brewery. When the fire was doused, the two of them started talking about their shared love of whiskey, and together, they came up with their own recipe. 6 years later, Stranahan's Colorado Whiskey was born, the first legal distillery in Colorado since Prohibition. We'll be right back. Welcome back as we celebrate July 4th by taking a look at a festive growing industry in our state, hard liquor. Colorado craft beers have given birth to an entire new industry here, distilled spirits. Dozens of them have popped up in the last few years, but as we found out, one of them was created kind of by accident. Welcome to what could be a liquor lover's greatest mistake.
My name is Sean Smiley. I'm the owner of State 38 Distilling in Golden, Colorado. We are a full fermenting, distilling, barrel aging, bottling distillery. We make 5 agave-based spirit products, and we just released 2 whiskeys.
For 3 years now, State 38, named for Colorado, the 38th state to join the Union, has been distilling spirits. But a beer brewing boo-boo is what led to this.
I started off home brewing, and I made a bad batch of beer once, but I'd already spent the $40 on the grains and material to make that beer. It tasted terrible, but it had alcohol in it. I didn't want to just flush that bad beer down the drain, so I came up with the idea to make a still, and I built one from Home Depot and Bed Bath & Beyond pieces and parts, and sure enough, I was able to vaporize and capture that alcohol from that bad batch of beer. The first time I ever distilled, felt like I was a magician. It felt really good. And I was hooked from that point on. It became a hobby and it became a passion.
A passion that is growing faster than Sean Smiley can keep up with. He's now going through 3 barrels of booze every 7 days.
We do about 1,000 bottles a week right now in production and sales.
It is a product he keeps as local as possible. While others import their alcohol from other states, he's one of the few to ferment it here. He even gets his grains from a warehouse in Aurora. Then he goes through the slow distillation process in a still he made himself. And then he bottles it. And when it's done, he even keeps his barrels close to home.
I actually sell them to breweries. The breweries take full advantage of these barrels for barrel-aged stouts or porters.
There is one problem with keeping it all in Colorado. When you essentially make tequila, you still can't call it that. Technically, tequila has to be made and bottled in Mexico. And the process isn't for the impatient. His agave spirits take a couple of weeks to produce. The whiskey products, 2 years. But is it ever worth the wait?
There's truly nothing more satisfying from a business professional standpoint than walking to a liquor store or a restaurant or a bar and seeing your product on the shelf.
A cool feeling that more and more Colorado distillers are experiencing all across the country.
I'm starting to see more and more of them show up on the shelves of liquor stores and bars and restaurants in Texas and California.
The goal with him and so many others who've started their own Colorado distilleries is to give drinkers options other than the popular big names they're used to seeing on store shelves.
Those are in mass-produced facilities, typically automated. The craft scene, you're gonna get some minor variances from batch to batch, and that's kind of exciting and maybe even sexy. And I believe the palate in Colorado is becoming sophisticated enough where people are picking up on those different variances of flavors and aromas between the different batches. And I think people really like that.
As for what the future holds, Smiley says he is focused on the people who've made him successful so far.
Keep up with Colorado demand is my #1 priority, and then I'm certainly open for expanding in other states as well.
One day soon, he may even be able to quit his day job as an engineer. Believe it or not, all of this is still just a part-time hobby that started with that brewing mistake, the best blunder Sean Smiley has ever made. An entire business built around a mistake. When we come back tonight, brotherly love. Meet the Columbine High School graduate who, along with his brother, turned a brew pub business into a Colorado distillery that now sells spirits all around the world. But first, did you know the modern Colorado wine industry was started in the garage of a Denver dentist? In 1958, Gerald Evansi started making wine in his 3-car garage near Denver Country Club. 10 years later, he opened Evansi Cellars, the first post-prohibition commercial winery in our state, producing 8,000 gallons in his first year alone. He's credited with giving birth to an industry that now boasts more than 100 wineries across the state and generates $17 million a year in sales. Evansi died on January 1st of this year at the age of 92. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Hope you're having a great July 4th. Tonight we're taking a look at a blossoming Colorado industry, craft distilling. You've probably noticed Colorado bottles at bars and restaurants all over the state as people start their own new businesses here, including a couple of brothers from Littleton who started selling this stuff out of the back of a hatchback. My, how times have changed. When Todd Leopold was just a kid going to Columbine High School, he never even knew what a head distiller was. Never dreamed you could make a living doing a job like this.
I thought other people did that, or larger companies did that, and it never occurred to me that owning your own business was something you can do.
Fast forward a few years, and he's now running, along with his brother Scott, Leopold Brothers Distillery in Northeast Denver.
We make whiskey, vodka, gin, absinthe, cordials, 24 different spirits I think we're up to now.
They started distilling spirits when they ran a brew pub in Michigan. They drove the booze back to Colorado and sold it by the carload. It quickly caught on.
We just had a little used storage unit, and that was our legal warehouse. And he would load up the spirits in his hatchback and go from restaurant to restaurant and liquor store to liquor store. I think he got us on 120, 130 accounts. So that when we got here, we actually had a little bit of a base.
Now, plenty of craft distillery fans all over the world have heard of them.
We've been distributing in the UK for 10 years now. We're as far away as Russia. We're in Italy, Portugal, Spain.
In the industry, this place is known for doing things the hard way, starting here on the largest hands-on malting floor in any North American distillery. This is where they lay out the grain, shovel it, and cool it. Then they start the meticulous process of turning it into spirits.
The first thing that you do is you ferment out that mash, and you're fermenting grain or fermenting fruit, and then you're getting that 5, 6, 7% alcohol mash, and you're taking that and you're distilling it. And at that point, that's kind of where the magic happens.
Malt, mill, mash, and ferment, one of the few places that does it all. They're able to partially because of our proximity to some key ingredients in quality spirits.
There's some great peaches here, there's great melons here, and there's world-class barley here. So it's a great environment. If you want to get into brewing and you want to get into distilling, Colorado's a great place to be.
And Todd knows a thing or two about both brewing and distilling. He was trained in Germany on how to brew beer, and today his distillery has deep roots in craft brewing. It's part of the process in making hard liquor. He even credits Coors Brewery and the early pioneers of Colorado craft beer like Governor Hickenlooper with paving the way for distillers like him.
If you needed help in the 1980s and you were just starting up, like Hickenlooper was, and some of the other brewers up through the early 90s, who are you going to call? You would call Coors, and they were always very receptive to that.
That same spirit of sharing now pervades Colorado's craft distillery industry. He and the other distillers around here share ideas and techniques. Most of the places making this stuff are still small enough to do it all by hand. And Todd and Scott Leopold wouldn't have it any other way.
For us as a family outfit, this is the sky. We're already there. So we're working with who we want to work with. We're making the spirits that we want to work with. And if sales go up, okay. If they don't, that's all right too. So for us, I think we're in a very fortunate situation.
Todd was humble enough to leave one thing out of our interview. He didn't brag that Leopold Brothers was named Distillery of the Year by the American Distilling Institute last year. Congratulations to those guys. Still ahead tonight, so many distilleries, so little time. We'll show you the fast way to hit Colorado's craft distillers and leave the driving to someone else. But before we go to break, did you know smuggling was big business in Colorado during Prohibition? More than $3,000 worth of liquor flowed into our state from Wyoming every month. One smuggler was caught trying to sneak 2,000 pints of whiskey into Denver, camouflaged as olive oil and salad dressing. We'll be right back. Finally tonight, we are hitching a ride on the Whiskey Wagon. You might consider it a party bus.
My name's Rick Tyson, and I'm the owner of Centennial Tours. Today we're going to be going on the Craft Distillery Bus Tour. All right, guys.
But for local liquor lovers, this is a mobile classroom.
We're going to take people to 3 different local craft distilleries around the Denver area. We're going to explain them the process of making vodka, gin, rum, tequila, whiskey.
There have long been craft beer tours in Colorado, even marijuana excursions, but this is new.
Most people have no idea. We got a lot of locals on the tour, and when I tell them that in just about 12 years, we went from having 1 distillery to 80 in Colorado, people today just don't believe it. So we're going to Rising Sun and gonna have a blast, have a really nice cocktail.
For those distillery owners, this is a chance to show off a little.
It makes people kind of appreciate what they're drinking.
For spouses, it's a unique gift.
I just looked it up trying to find a Father's Day gift for my husband last week. It's like, what can we do?
If you yearn to learn about libations, just hop aboard and take a ride.
More than anything, this is educating people that we live in this beautiful new era of craft spirits, and you got to try it, and you got to do it properly so you can really enjoy it.
The Whiskey Wagon, the safe way to experience Colorado craft distilleries. Speaking of safe, we do hope you have a happy and safe 4th of July weekend. Remember, do it responsibly if this stuff's involved. And the next time you go to a bar or liquor store, why don't you order something local? And remember all the hard work from fellow Coloradans that went into creating it. I'm Jeremy Hubbard. Thanks for joining us tonight.